At my wedding, my mother-in-law humiliated me. Then I took the mic and ended it all. She smiled sweetly when she said it loud enough for everyone to hear. My husband just sat there. I wasn't supposed to fight back, but I did. And when I did, the whole room fell silent. Because they never thought I would be the one to burn it all down with nothing but a smile. I heard her voice before I saw her face. It cut through the music, through the laughter. Let's just hope he sticks around long enough to regret this. She was talking about me. At my own wedding. My mother-in-law, Margot. She said it like a joke. Like I was some mistake he hadn't realized yet. And Richard, my father-in-law, he laughed. Didn't flinch. Didn't even look surprised. Just laughed. I stood 10 feet away, holding a glass of champagne. Frozen. Inside, I cracked. I had spent years shrinking to fit into this family, smiling through every backhanded compliment. But that was the last one. Something in me shifted. Snapped. I wasn't going to let her write the ending. Not this time. I used to think Margot didn't hate me. She was just particular. Sharp. Polished. Like one of those antique mirrors that looks beautiful until you realize it's warped the whole time. From the very first dinner I had at their house, I felt it. The smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The way she called me Claire with a tilt of her head, like she was trying on the name and didn't like how it fit. Richard, my father-in-law, was quieter. Not cold, just detached. He spoke to me like I was a guest at a business event, not the woman marrying his son. He asked about my career. Never about my childhood. Never about my family. At first, I tried to see the best in it. I told myself Margot was adjusting. That maybe she was protective, maybe she just wanted what was best for Oliver. But then came the little things. The time she corrected my grammar in front of his cousins. The way she always forgot my dietary preferences and offered dishes she knew I wouldn't eat. The Christmas card that had everyone's name in cursive except mine, printed like a footnote. And Oliver? He saw it, but he didn't always know what to do. He'd squeeze my hand under the table, kiss the side of my head after dinner, whisper, "She'll come around." I wanted to believe that. So I did. For far too long. Before the wedding, when we started planning, Margot offered to help. Which really meant she took over. She vetoed the outdoor venue I loved. Said the beachfront ceremony was too bohemian for their family style. She chose the florist. She decided on the color palette. She even tried to rewrite parts of the ceremony script, said the wording we picked was too emotional. I let it go. Because Oliver looked so proud when he said, "It'll be beautiful no matter what." But somewhere between the dress fittings and table charts, I realized something. Margot didn't see this as our wedding. She saw it as her production. Her showcase. And I was just the actress who needed to hit her marks and not get in the way. Still, I tried. I played along. I smiled when she handed me a gift box of bridal essentials, full of creams I was allergic to and perfume I never wore. I laughed at her jokes. Nodded when she gave unsolicited marriage advice that sounded more like warnings. There was this one moment, maybe 3 weeks before the wedding, that stuck with me. We were doing a final tasting with the caterer. I said I didn't like the rosemary chicken. She said, "Well, luckily it's not really your day. It's the family's." She didn't laugh after. Neither did I. Richard barely spoke that whole day. When the coordinator asked if the father of the groom would like to give a speech at the reception, he just said, "If there's time." I think that was the moment I stopped hoping. Stopped hoping they'd see me. Stopped trying to earn a place in a family that only ever made me feel like a placeholder. Oliver was the only part that felt real. The way he'd brush hair behind my ear without even thinking. The way he defended me quietly, but consistently. He loved me with this steadiness I'd never had before. And because of that, I stayed silent. I let them dim me down to polite. Too agreeable. Too invisible. But weddings have a way of magnifying everything. The love. The tension. The truth you've been avoiding. And as the day got closer, I could feel it rising, something brittle, right under the surface. I thought I was imagining it. I wasn't. Not even close. The wedding was held at Richard and Margot's summer estate, of course. They insisted. Said it made more sense than wasting money on a venue. Margot even called it intimate, like it was a gift. But it didn't feel like a gift. It felt like a stage. One I had no control over. From the moment I walked in, I could feel it. Her presence. Every corner had her fingerprints. The flower arrangements she picked. The music she approved. Even the menu cards had her name listed under hostess. Not mine. Not Oliver's. Hers. She greeted the guests like royalty. Took photos with extended family. Offered champagne to everyone, but handed me water. "It's important to stay hydrated in that dress, sweetheart," she said, tapping my arm. I laughed, because that's what I'd been trained to do. Polite, gracious, easy to swallow. Oliver didn't see it. He was busy running around, checking details, hugging old friends, charming his way through the crowd. He looked happy, and I didn't want to ruin that. Not again. When I stepped into the bridal room to freshen up, she was already there. In my chair, touching up her lip gloss. Like it was her moment. She didn't even flinch when I walked in. Just looked at me in the mirror and said, "Let's keep the emotions light, shall we? Waterproof mascara only works so hard." I stood there, frozen. She got up slowly, brushing invisible lint from her dress, and walked out like nothing had happened. The ceremony itself was fine. Beautiful, actually. Oliver and I wrote our own vows. He cried during his. His voice cracked when he said, "You're the calm I didn't know I was searching for." My hands trembled as I placed the ring on his finger. I remember thinking, for just a moment, maybe this is what peace feels like. But it didn't last. Not even through the reception. Margot took the seat beside Richard at the head table. Front and center. Like it was her wedding. She clinked her glass louder than anyone, made toasts to family resilience and new beginnings without ever saying my name. Guests smiled. Laughed. No one noticed how tight my smile was getting. Every time I caught her eye, she looked at me like I didn't belong. Like she was waiting for me to trip. And Richard, he didn't help. Didn't speak much. Just raised his glass, nodded through conversations, and laughed a little too hard when someone mentioned second marriages working better than firsts. I felt like I was watching a play where everyone knew their lines, except me. I wanted to believe I was imagining it, that I was being too sensitive. But the air was heavy. Something wasn't right. Then came the cake. Or, more precisely, the moment right before the cake. The music had softened. The MC was prepping for the speeches. Guests were shifting in their seats. And I was standing a few steps behind our table, trying to breathe. And that's when I heard it. Her voice. Clear. Deliberate. Laced with sugar. "She's just pretending to be loved," Margot said to someone, maybe Richard, maybe my aunt. And then he laughed. Actually laughed. And that's when everything inside me cracked. I didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't even blink. I just stood there, glass in hand, hearing her words replay over and over again. "She's just pretending to be loved." And then Richard's laugh, low, smug, like it confirmed everything she'd said. I felt my grip tighten around the stem of the glass. It cracked. Not shattered. Just enough to warn me. Just enough to mirror what was happening inside. The room was full of people. Soft lighting, clinking silverware. A string quartet playing something delicate. But all I could hear was that sentence. "She's just pretending to be loved." Pretending. As if the vows we exchanged were part of a script. As if Oliver, my husband, my anchor, had been performing. And worse? They said it like I wasn't even there. Like I was invisible. Like I had always been. That's what broke me. Not the insult. Not the laughter. But the fact that I could be reduced so easily, so publicly, by people who barely knew me, but claimed me as family. I turned away before the tears could fully surface. Walked outside. Just a few steps. I didn't cry. Didn't scream. I just stood still, staring out at the ocean, letting the salt air sting my eyes instead. And that's when I remembered. Every moment I had swallowed pain for the sake of peace. Every time I'd laughed when it hurt. Every time I told myself this is just how they are. No more. Their words didn't break me. They revealed me. They showed me who they were. And more importantly, who I no longer had to be. I wasn't going back into that room the same woman. I wasn't going to sit through speeches and cake and small talk pretending I didn't just hear my own worth being dismissed like a joke. Something had shifted. And this time, I wasn't shrinking to make space for them. I stayed outside longer than I meant to. The breeze off the ocean was colder than I expected, but I welcomed it. It cut through the heat rising in my chest. It helped me think. For once, I didn't feel the need to explain myself. Not to them. Not to Oliver. Not even to the version of me that would have gone back inside and smiled through it. That version of me? She didn't survive the last 10 minutes. I left her on that patio, somewhere between Margot's words and Richard's laugh. I stood there with my back to the glass doors. Guests passed behind them, laughing, talking, lifting their glasses. It looked like a celebration. But for me, it felt like a reckoning. When I turned back to go inside, I wasn't the same. I didn't fix my face. Didn't check my hair. Didn't soften my eyes for the camera. I walked in like a woman who had nothing left to lose. The moment I stepped into the reception hall, I saw him, Oliver. He was mid-conversation with his brother, but his eyes found me instantly. They scanned my face like a map, looking for damage. He knew. Even if he hadn't heard the words, he felt their weight on me. He took a step forward. I shook my head slightly. Not now. He didn't push. Just nodded, respectful. Quiet, like always. Supportive in a way that didn't demand space. The MC was setting up for the speeches. Guests were finding their seats again. Someone handed me a fresh drink I didn't ask for. I set it down untouched. As the mic turned on, Oliver moved beside me. I thought he was going to speak. I thought he was going to do what he always did, step in when it got hard. But I stepped forward first. He looked surprised. So did the MC. And everyone else. I reached for the mic with a calm I didn't know I still had. Before the toasts, I said, I'd like to say something. A hush swept through the room. Forks paused. Glasses stilled. I saw Margot look up from her seat at the head table. Saw the slight raise of her brows. Like she couldn't imagine what I had to say that hadn't already been scripted. But this wasn't part of her script. It never had been. I wasn't going to speak tonight, I said, voice steady. But it turns out, silence only serves people who are comfortable with it. That line. It wasn't planned. But it landed. Margot blinked. Richard shifted in his chair. I could feel Oliver behind me, still quiet there. But this wasn't his moment. It was mine. I came into this family thinking love was something I had to earn, I said. That if I smiled enough, agreed enough, disappeared enough, I might belong. The room was so quiet I could hear the waves outside. But tonight, someone reminded me that I'm just pretending to be loved. I let the words hang. Let everyone absorb what had been said. By whom? And with what kind of cruelty? I looked directly at Margot. You're right, I said. I did pretend for a long time. But not about being loved. My voice didn't shake. Not once. I pretended you didn't hurt me. I pretended your words were jokes. I pretended I didn't see how hard you worked to make me small. She didn't smile this time. And Richard, I said, turning to him, I pretended your silence wasn't an answer. A pause. But I'm done pretending. And with that, I handed the mic back to the MC, turned around and walked back to my seat. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't look back. And when I sat down, Oliver took my hand like it was already decided. Because it was. The moment I sat down, the air in the room shifted. Not dramatically. Not like thunder or glass breaking. But like something old and stale had finally been cleared away. Like a storm had passed, even though no one had moved. No one clapped. No one dared. It wasn't that kind of speech. It wasn't for applause. It was for clarity. I looked down at my hands, laced with Oliver's. He squeezed gently. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. Across the room, I saw Margot still seated at the head table. Perfect posture. Chin slightly raised. But her eyes weren't steady anymore. They flicked from face to face, scanning the room like she was trying to figure out who had just slipped out of her grasp. Her wine glass sat untouched. Richard sat beside her, still and silent. He didn't look up. Didn't look at me. Didn't look at her. Just stared straight ahead, like the wall in front of him had suddenly become fascinating. And around them, guests started shifting. Someone coughed. A cousin whispered to his wife. An aunt avoided eye contact. You could feel it. The recalibration. People realizing that what they had thought was just awkward family dynamics had always been something deeper. Something uglier. And now, they couldn't unsee it. One of Oliver's nieces got up from her seat and walked over to me. She hugged me. Tight. No words. Just warmth. Then a few others came. A bridesmaid. My friend Maya. Even one of Richard's sisters. None of them said much. Just little things. I had no idea. You handled that with grace. I'm proud of you. It wasn't about taking sides. It was about witnessing something real. The MC tried to resume the flow of the evening. A soft joke. A few light-hearted comments. But it didn't matter. The energy had changed. It wasn't stiff anymore. It wasn't fake. It was honest. I glanced back at Margot one more time. Her expression had shifted. Not embarrassed. Not apologetic. But uneasy. Like she couldn't control what was happening, and that terrified her more than anything I could have said. She started to rise from her chair. Then stopped. Sat back down slowly. Richard never moved. They didn't speak for the rest of the night. Not to each other. Not to us. Not to anyone. And maybe that silence was the real speech. Because silence, when you've spent years using it as a weapon, can feel deafening when it's no longer working. I didn't feel triumphant. Not exactly. I felt seen. Held. Whole. Not because I'd won. But because I'd stopped playing. This wasn't revenge. This was return. To myself. We didn't stay much longer. After the cake was cut, After the flower girl fell asleep in a chair with frosting on her chin, after enough hugs and small talk to keep it polite, we slipped out. No big announcement. No grand exit. Just two people walking quietly toward the car, hand in hand. The stars were starting to show. The wind had picked up a little. My heels dangled from one hand, the hem of my dress gathered in the other. Oliver opened the passenger door and waited. I didn't get in right away. He looked at me, brow soft, lips parted like he wanted to ask but didn't want to push. "You okay?" he asked finally. "Really?" I looked at the man I had just married. The man who didn't try to fix me, didn't try to rescue me. Who let me speak. Who let me be. And I smiled. Fully. Honestly. The kind of smile that doesn't need an audience. "I am now," I said. And I meant it. The drive home was quiet. Not heavy. Just still. His hand never left mine. Not at the red lights. Not when we passed the beach. Not when I exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. Back at our apartment, I took off the dress and hung it gently. It didn't feel tainted. It felt reclaimed. Like it belonged to the woman I had become, not the girl they expected. We curled up on the couch, still in the glow of everything. No music. No TV. Just the sound of our breathing and the city humming outside the window. Oliver brushed a strand of hair behind my ear and whispered, "You were incredible." I didn't say anything back. Didn't need to. Because we both knew. The real ceremony didn't happen under the arch. It happened at that mic. When I finally chose myself. And for once, I didn't feel like I had to apologize for that. Didn't feel like I had to explain or soften or make it easier for anyone else to swallow. I had said what needed to be said. And the silence that followed? It was mine now. Not their weapon. Not their shield. Mine. The next day, there was no text from Richard. No call. No follow-up from Margot. Just silence. Their favorite language. But this time, it didn't land the way they wanted it to. It didn't ache. It didn't sting. It felt empty. Like a door quietly closing on something I no longer needed. A few days later, a card showed up at our door. No return address. Just my name in perfect script. Inside was a generic congratulations card. Blank on the inside except for one line, written in Margot's sharp, controlled handwriting. It would have been better if you'd kept it private. That was it. No apology. No remorse. Just a final attempt to regain control. To shame me into silence again. I didn't reply. I didn't rage. I just dropped it in the trash and kept making pancakes. Later that week, I got a message from someone I didn't expect, Chloe. Margot's daughter from her first marriage. We'd barely spoken outside of holidays. Her text said, "You did what none of us ever had the courage to do. I'm sorry you had to be the one to carry it." I stared at that message for a long time. Because deep down I had known I wasn't the first. I'd seen it in the way Chloe would flinch when Margot made certain jokes. In the way she stayed quiet, always on the edge of the room. Her message didn't make what happened okay. But it made it make sense. Margot wasn't just cruel to me. She was consistent. Sometimes the justice you get isn't loud. It doesn't come with applause or vindication. It comes quietly, from the people who saw it, lived it, survived it. And sometimes, the absence of someone's voice is all the closure you'll ever get. I didn't miss them. That was the twist I didn't see coming. I thought I'd mourn their absence. That I'd long for a father-in-law who checked in, or a mother-in-law who truly welcomed me. But I didn't. What I felt was space. Breathable. Honest. Oliver and I moved forward, into late-night groceries, burnt dinners, mismatched sheets, and a home full of laughter. We didn't talk about the wedding much. Not because we were avoiding it, but because we didn't need to relive it. The lesson had already taken root, and months later, sitting beside him on our tiny porch, wrapped in an old blanket, he said it softly. "You didn't just speak for yourself that night. You broke something that needed breaking." I turned to him. "I didn't mean to make a scene," I said. He smiled. "You didn't," he replied. "You made a boundary. And that was the difference."